Why Leonardo?
When did you start studying him? Because you've been a fan for a while because of the short.
Right. Well, it all started with that short because I wanted to make a short about basically a guy flying with homemade wings. I thought that'd be funny. You know, it's just sort of an oddball thing, and it's also it's something funny and odd, but it's also about man like reaching for some possible dream kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to come up with a character to do that with, and then I was thinking about Leonardo da Vinci, and I thought, well, he kind of thought about flying machines and all that stuff. So I was like, well, maybe it's Leonardo da Vinci. And I had never seen a film animated, he did definitely, about Leonardo da Vinci. I'd never seen him animated. So I thought, well, maybe I could do that. So that's what got me going on the short, and then I started reading about Leonardo to understand him more. Basically, from my training at Pixar, we always research the heck out of everything when we're developing the films. So, and that's what led to Your Friend the Rat, the stuff I learned about rats and stuff. So, I just started reading every book I could about him and trying to, immerse myself in a Leonardo da Vinci idea and world. And so, even though the short is an abstraction of him trying to fly, I wanted to instill it with that reality and the factual, sense of knowledge in a sense. So I finished the short. It took 10 years to make. Made it. It's 2D animated. Did most of the animation myself. It took 10 years because I had to do it after hours, weekends and stuff. And then I was at a film festival, and this mother asked me with her kid. They said how much they enjoyed the short. And she goes, is there other films like this where it's like entertaining and also like about like a historical figure or something? Because it's a really nice way in for children to kind of understand about, people who existed, real, these people they should know about. And I was like, well, I can't really think of anything. So then again, I was like, well, maybe I could make that. So that made me think, oh man, I've done all this research about Leonardo da Vinci. Maybe I could turn it into a feature. And so then I started thinking, well, where would I make a feature of his life? And then I really was interested in this time when he left Italy for France. And it's 3 years, it's the end of his life. And I found that interesting because here's a man who's in his 60s. It's the Renaissance. There's no trains. There's no planes. It took 3 months for him to get from Italy to France. And he knew when he was leaving, he would never go back. So you're like, that's fascinating already, why would he do that? And what's that all about? And then doing my research about the kingdom at the time, you have Francis I, who's a new king. He's a young king. And I'm like, oh, well, there you have the mentor-mentee relationship, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker thing or something. But then I felt too, okay, that's where I could approach it, but it's also kind of we've been there, done that in a lot of films. And in the research I learned about Marguerite, this king's sister, and how she's this amazing woman in history. She wrote her own books. She was a patron of the arts and would actually have artist salons and invite different artists to talk about their art and their work and about life and stuff. And then, and she also was very much involved in the community, and people loved her, kind to everyone. And she also was able to keep the peace between the Catholics and the Protestants during the Reformation that was starting to happen. And even rescued her, or got the release of her brother who got captured, the king, who got captured by the Spanish king during a war. And she negotiated his release. So
wow.
She was pretty amazing. So then I started thinking, well, maybe Leonardo da Vinci had a bigger impact on Marguerite than on King Francis, because King Francis was a king. I mean, he brought the Renaissance to France, but there was nothing like that about him. So I thought that's kind of an interesting thing. And that gave me this nice triangle of drama, this narrative that I could play with, because you're always looking for that. Not telling a documentary, and you need to find what is going to make the story dramatic and what's going to give you conflict and stuff. So that to me was an interesting area to go into. Then you add Louise, their mom, into it, and then you get a whole other dynamic and dimension and power struggle and stuff. So,
how true is your story to the recorded events and what you were able to find out?
well, everything in the movie is somewhat based on facts, on the real things. Obviously, it's an animated film. It's also a movie. It's not a documentary.
Right.
So you definitely have to take liberties, and definitely being animated, you have to even kind of, you want it charactered and entertaining, and appeal to younger audiences and
Right.
stuff. So you have to kind of shape it in a way that it's will fit into that mold a little bit. So but everything, like it says at the beginning, based on events in the life of Leonardo da Vinci, it's true. It really is. So there's some things, like we have the two kings show up, Henry VIII and Charles V of Spain. So, for example, Henry VIII did come to France, but it was after Leonardo da Vinci was there. He did actually bring his own castle, and so, like a prefab castle,
Yeah.
I guess, and. Just those kind of ideas to me are funny, and so
Yeah.
and I needed this kind of idea of a king, like trying to get into the fraternity of kings. So that, to me, even though it's not quite what happened while Leonardo da Vinci was there, it's still true to the historical record to a point, and I could bring it in. So there's a little bit of fast and loose, like things like that.
Mhm.
But Leonardo did try to build an ideal city while he was there. They did change the name from Remoratan to Romoratan. They did, at that time. They did. There's Marguerite was definitely in the court. You had Leonardo did leave. He was working for the Pope, and he did leave from there. And there's nobody knows why. Giuliano, his patron, did die at that time. Maybe that's why he left, because he didn't have a patron. He needed a new patron. He did meet the king in Bologna. I mean, so like all that stuff is true to the history.
Do you view Leonardo kind of as the father or the inspiration for STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics?
I think sure, if you you needed a father of that, I think you could point to Leonardo da Vinci as one of the originators of that idea. His big thing was, I think, in his work, and he was always striving for, was finding the interconnectedness of everything. So he really believed art and science and mathematics were all interrelated to each other. I mean, he would work on his art and figure out the mathematical beauty in his artwork, the golden mean, and like figure out, how everything was perfect, and how he looked at nature was as an artist, and so he would see water, and he would see how water, the way the ripples worked, and how it looked like a woman's braid in their hair. So he would see these connections, and like vines and stuff. So he would see these connections everywhere. So I think like STEAM, that's the idea, right? It's all these interwoven kind of disciplines in a sense. So he definitely saw it that way. So I think, yeah, he could be the godfather of STEAM, sure.
Okay.